Welcome back to the Rally Room. I'm Emiliana Guereca, your host, and this is where we continue the conversation beyond marching, beyond protesting. So together, we are going to talk about how to make the world a better place. We're going to dive deep into issues, and we'll be finding out what we can do now to help the situation where we're at. All right, let's get into it. Today is Wednesday, February 18, 2026. Yes, just a year into the presidency. So let's talk about what everybody is feeling. I know Valentine's Day just passed, and no matter where you are in this country, it's cold. Yeah, it's cold. I'm in Los Angeles, so we've been dealing with rain and chaos. But today we're going to talk about the state of chaos that we are in this country and where we are in this moment. Where we are in the United States is really, really chaotic. And I want to talk about the trauma, the resilience and whatnot, but really talk about that this is not accidental. All of this is not accidental. The breaking news all the time, the dealing from one big issue to the other. Is it incompetence? Is it malicious? What is it? And so I think when we talk about the state of chaos that we're in, we're talking about is it polling numbers? Are we dealing with low polling numbers and therefore they throw distractions at us, from ICE agents in the streets to military in the streets? As we know, public education's being defunded, healthcare is being defunded, and we're in the middle of yet another government shutdown. Yeah, we're in the middle. This would be the third for this term for this president. So it would be the third government shutdown. And the question is it by design? Is this part of the cover up? The cover up to not talk about the Epstein files, because I don't think it's just dysfunction. Maybe the president is incompetent. Not maybe, I'm going to say my personal opinion. Yes, I think he's incompetent, but the folks around him aren't. There are people working with him that are highly strategic. So I don't think it's just dysfunction. I think that it's by design. I think this whole second term is, as we've talked before, it's the retribution term. And I think that he is choosing how to continuously exhaust us, from the breaking news to the emergencies here and whatnot. So I think he's choosing to send, for example, enforcement to what he calls the blue states, right? What he calls the states that didn't vote for him. So creating chaos in these states, like California, Illinois, New York, recently Minnesota, Minneapolis. So creating a state of emergency there for its people. But I also think that it's by design because it also affects our pocketbooks. Think about businesses having to shut down. Think about people living in fear. So I do think that it is by design. I don't think it's an accident to continuously have us on flight or fight mode. So that's what we're talking about. So chaos as governance, as we look, through it, and some people would say let's zoom out and talk about it, but bigger picture. Thinking about the military on the streets, the National Guard in the streets from DC, Minnesota, Los Angeles, doesn't signal stability. It doesn't. It signals fear. It signals force, control, and of course, chaos. So what do communities do when this happens, when these stressors happen? So I think some communities go into hiding. I think that when schools are defunded, when healthcare is defunded, I think that it starts to break our resilience. I think that as communities, we feel hollowed out, right? From our income being decimated to feeling fearful. I think it's by design. I think that even ICE targeting schools, picking up and detaining minors, and let's call it what it is, murdering activists for exercising their fundamental right to free speech. You're not reforming government. You're not emptying the swamp. And I think you are the swamp. I think you've brought the stench from the swamp there. So I think that it's also destabilizing. I think it destabilizes society as we know it. So I think it's by design. I think that destabilized societies, fearful and destabilized communities are easier to control. Yeah, we're easier to control when we are distracted and continuously fed fear, chaos. So, silencing communities, silencing dissent, exhausting the public starts to feel normal, starts to feel like, well, this is just what it is. And people then are easier to control. So I think that's what we're dealing with. And I think people are starting to feel a little overwhelmed, and so they'll start to disengage and just think about the folks that are saying, well, they were criminals. No, they weren't. 92% of the folks they have arrested do not have a criminal record. And so we've got to think about when we need to pull back, rest in order to continue to engage, to push back, because we cannot continuously live in a state of chaos. And that is what this current administration is trying to do. And I think it's a distraction. I think it's a distraction from whatever it is that they're hiding. I personally think that being named thousands of times in the Epstein files is something that they want to hide. But also it's something that is used for control, and then it turns into also voter suppression, because at the end of the day, they are looking forward facing. They are looking at that 2026 midterms. And so this is a president that has continuously spread the lie that the 2020 election was rigged. He cannot accept that he lost. He will not say that he lost. And his people, his folks that are really, really connected to him, are unable to say that. And so this leads us into voter suppression. And with that, we're going to talk about what's happening with Fulton County raid. So Fulton County is in Georgia, and what is happening there should terrify all of us. Every single voter should reach out and say this is not acceptable. So the officials in Fulton County have stated in a legal filing that the Department of Justice lied in order to obtain a warrant to seize their 2020 election materials. Let that sink in. Yeah, the county is suing the Department of Justice. So they allege that the FBI executed a search and seizure at the county's election hub and operations center on January 18th. So they allege that the FBI executed a search, and that the filing claims that the action was orchestrated by Kurt Olson. Who is Kurt Olson? Well, Kurt Olson is a former campaign attorney connected to the president. And if true, that's not an oversight. It's not. That's federal force targeting local election infrastructure. That's not election integrity. That's voter intimidation. In the state of Georgia, which already has a voter ID component to voting. So this is voter intimidation. It is voter suppression. And the bigger question, how petty can he get? He is still relitigating and thinking about that 2020 election that he will not admit that he lost. And his folks in his orbit will not admit that he lost. So the narrative of the stolen election isn't just about the past. It isn't about just that election. It is about conditioning the public that elections, that voters, the ballot box cannot be trusted. It is conditioning folks to think that elections can and will be rigged. By whom? Well, by this current president, because that is what is happening. the undermining trust in elections. We are now at 6 years of continuing to spread this lie and not giving up on it, even though all of the proof out there says that he lost, And so then they justify the sending the FBI for their voter material. So once we normalize federal power that can go inside a local election offices and mess around with that, we are dealing in voter suppression. We are dealing with possible rigging of elections. And so then we think about that democracy is becoming negotiable. Right. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Don't get me started on the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act is another tactic of voter suppression. It passed in the House and now is waiting for the Senate approvals. I think it will fail. I am hoping that every senator sees it for what it is, which is voter suppression. And if you are a true believer of democracy, if you truly are a patriot, as they call themselves, then you would not stand for something like that. So, reminder: what the SAVE Act is a voter suppression tactic, and it's another way to try to control what they see as the midterm avalanche. The November 2026, a lot of these seats will be up for grabs. They may lose their majority, and so they would be losing control. So, as they try and sow disinformation, mistrust in voting, what they are doing is what they are accusing everybody else of doing, which is rigging the election. That's what it is. So that's what we're in for. So I want everyone to pay attention. And I think someone was talking about making sure that you have a passport, that you have a voter ID. I currently carry a passport because I'm brown. I'm brown. I live in Los Angeles and I've seen ICE across from our offices. So I do want to say that, yes, if you're able to, get a passport. Let's see what happens, because the midterm seems like a long time away, but it's not. It's around the corner. We want to make sure that we are all working towards exercising our right to vote and that we're able to vote them out. All right. So let's talk about, they've pulled most of their Department of Homeland Security out of Minnesota, out of Minneapolis, a little bit out of Los Angeles. We're still seeing them, but not at the level that we were a few months ago. So the National Guard deployments that had expanded have retracted. But keep in mind, we are in the middle of a government shutdown, as Congress voted not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. And I think, again, this is something that we need to continue to push back. They have very large budgets. They are currently purchasing warehouses across the country. And so when we think about it, okay, they're going to turn warehouses into detention centers. Who do we think is going to be held there? Because at some point, it's going to be citizens. Because as we know, 92% did not have a criminal record. So we've got to make sure that we push back on that. We've got to make sure that for-profit detention centers will not get built. So that's something that we've got to continue to watch, and watching that enforcement of what they're calling enforcement of immigration rules quickly turns into just detention centers, for-profit detention centers. Want to make sure you're reaching out to your elected officials and say, absolutely not. Do not fund the Department of Homeland Security in the billions. And also dismantle ICE, dismantle the whole entire organization. As it is currently operating, it is rogue and it is harmful to democracy. It is harmful to society. So I'll say there, at this point, we've got to count up the number of people that have died in the hands of ICE. So the current government has blood on its hands, both from its citizens and from some of the immigrants. A lot of the immigrants, never mind the child separation that is happening in different states across borders. So making sure that we continue to advocate, one, for immigrants' rights, Two, for clean elections, making sure that the government isn't involved in all of that, but also dismantling ICE. Why? Because they are watching. They are watching how we react. And if we acquiesce, if we continuously give in, then they think it's okay, and they continue to enforce their power on the citizens. So we're not going to let that happen. But not only that, they continue to send chaos our way. But once we pull back and say we are not accepting this, at some point they start listening. It may seem like it takes a long time, but at the end of the day, they are politicians and they want to get reelected. So we have power. So what I want to say is also, none of us are insulated. We're not. We all know of immigrants. We all know of folks that may or may not be able to vote, or they sit out. So it's not insulated. It is not just targeting immigrants. It is targeting civil society. It is targeting civil rights. It is targeting a lot more things than just immigrant rights. So when people reach out, and I have a few questions that I'm going to go through, when people reach out, well, I think that they shouldn't come illegally. I think that we're having no empathy, but also not understanding that immigration reform is something that should be talked about before launching the cruelty that is happening on the streets, before giving ICE billions of dollars. So I'll leave it that. So if we continue to give them power, they're not going to shrink, they expand, right? So first they come for immigrants, then protesters, then the journalists. Remember Don Lemon? He was arrested. And then their political opponents. History has shown us a pattern that if we acquiesce and we give up our power, that then the government turns into a dictatorship. We're not going to let it. We're going to continue to fight back. So that brings me to, what do we think they're hiding? Why all the chaos on society? Why send all the chaos to the blue states, not necessarily the red states? Defund things in the blue state, not the red states. I think it's the accountability piece, or the absence of it in the Epstein case. I think that the country spent years obsessing about her emails. Her emails, meaning Hillary Clinton. Do you remember that? Her server became a national scandal. She was using her server. But now no one is asking about all of the emails, his emails, their emails. That list of emails has listed powerful men, a few women, powerful men, finance and politics in the White House, men who've occupied or have influenced policy, men that are in the White House, in tech, men that we saw as decent men, right? So what we've seen, instead of accountability, we've seen delays. We've seen sealed documents. We've seen selective outreach. That's what we're seeing. But this system is not set up for accountability. The system is not set up to hold these men in power accountable, right? So we're told to fear voter fraud. We're told to fear immigrants. We're told to fear teachers' agenda. We're told to fear protesters. We're Antifa and we're rioters, right? But we are not being told that we should fear these exploitation networks, that we should talk about the Epstein files as they are, that these powerful men were abusing girls and were abusing their power. And so they're moving in silence, selective outrage. This is chaos too. It is chaos. The survivors have not gotten justice, right? This is not random chaos. It's selective chaos, because there's justice for some. As we have seen, Prince Andrew their title was taken away, right? There's a few folks that have sold their agencies. Outside of the United States, the folks are being held accountable. Within the United States, silence. There's protection for them. So what we're looking at is justice for some, not for all. So I think this is something that we need to continue to talk about until all of these abusers and their protectors are brought to justice, until there is justice for the survivors. That's when we will stop talking about it. So I know a few folks have sent me emails. Emmy, you're obsessed with the Epstein files. No, I am obsessed with justice. I am obsessed with bringing those pedophiles to court, making sure that they spend prison time, just like Ghislaine Maxwell. She does not deserve a pardon. She knew what was happening. She was aiding and abetting pedophiles. So we need to start asking that same question. Next week, I'm going to talk about Bill Barr. I'm going to talk about how he's connected to Epstein and how deep the rabbit hole goes so that we can see that this person did not commit suicide. Nope. So that's next week. So what is chaos and to do? So it serves purposes. Chaos exhausts us, distracts us, and conditions us to every week bring a new emergency. So you stop reacting, you stop pushing back because it's normalizing you being exhausted. And for women, that is such an old tactic. We know that's what happens. So we're not going to normalize it. Government shutdown, federal raids, any of that, we're going to continue to push back. Why? Because we know that the next step is that our rights continue to get rolled back. So we're not going to stay in quiet. We're not going to stay quiet about the cruelty, the retribution, and the cover-up with the Epstein files. We're not. Coming up next, the rally point. So let's talk about it. Rally point here. So we're talking about chaos. Chaos is not leadership. The retaliation is not strength. And so the federal intimidation of election offices is not patriotism. It's not. Deploying forces into communities is not governance. Silencing dissent is not stability. And so what they are avoiding is the accountability. They are avoiding the low polling numbers. They are avoiding that he is an unpopular president, that we are still not able to afford eggs, butter, bread, any of that, right? Unemployment, where is it? Right? So let's continue to document what is happening. This is an unpopular president that is creating chaos. And we've got to continue to organize our communities to make sure, one, that we vote them out, but to make sure that we are not disengaging, to make sure that we continue to hold them accountable. That is the goal. And I think holding them accountable will bring some healing, some peace, and some justice to all of us. So thank you for joining me. I'm Emiliana Guereca. You are in the rally room. And believe me when I tell you that what we're witnessing and living through is chaos. But we're going to get through it, and we're going to get through it together. Join me next week in the rally room. If you like this episode, hit like, share, send me questions. Yeah, some of the questions I have been getting pertain to the Epstein files. And next week, we're going to talk through Bill Barr. Who is he? What does this have to do? But also connecting the names and the emails, one to the president, but also to the bigger picture, whether it's tech, finance, or politics. Those names, not all have committed crimes, but some of them have. So join me next week in the rally room. Thank you for listening. I'm Emiliana Guereca, your host.